This is a lesson on finding percent of a number, and the objective today is for you, the student, to be able to find percent of a number, and we're going to be doing that by, number one, converting the percent to a decimal and then multiplying. So there's kind of a step-by-step process involved here, and none of the steps are really that hard. It's just that you have to remember which steps to do. In order to succeed in this lesson, you're going to have to know how to find your place value to the hundredths place, because when we do number 2, converting percents to decimals, we have to find that hundredths place. So the hundredths place is the second place next to the decimal, so it goes tenths and hundredths. So if I have something like 62%, I'm going to start writing my percent in the hundredths place, which is where the 2 goes, and then the 6 goes here on the tenths. So we have to be able to convert that, and that's what we're going to be doing for step 2 or number 2 here. And then multiplying by that decimal is going to be key too. So we're going to have to, remember how to multiply with a decimal number. It's a little review now. That percent means out of 100, right? The per part means out of, and the cent means 100. And so when we see something like 78%, we have to be able to say, all right, 78%, that equals 78 out of 100. If I see that as a fraction, it's 78 over 100, or 78 hundredths. And since it's 78 hundredths, I'm going to write the 78 starting in the hundredths place. And so my decimal equivalent is 0.78. And today's lesson is going to require you to get from 78% to 0.78. Here's another example. 8% means 8 out of 100, 8 over 100, or 8 hundredths. And do you see how the 8 is in the hundredths place here? And that's exactly where it needs to go. A lot of people try to put that 8 in the tenths place, but you have to avoid that. It has to go in the hundredths place. So we have to see 8% as 0.08. And after we do that, we can multiply. All right, so let's take a look at how these problems are formed, and we'll talk about how to read them. All right, so here's a very typical problem, 40% of 50. And in order to do this, we have to read this correctly. So how are we going to do that? We're going to read 40% here. That's our first part of this number sentence here. So 40% equals 0.40. All right, so we have to see that. That we have to be able to convert that decimal equivalent and do it quickly. Now, anytime you see the word of in multiplication of in 5th grade, it's going to mean multiply. So if I know the first part is 0.40, the of means multiply, and the 50 is, well, it's just a 50. So all together that means 0.40. Multiply goes there, and then the 50 goes there. So it's 0.40 times 50. And then the only thing we have to do at that point is remember how to multiply with decimal numbers. All right, so here's our guided practice. First problem is 30% of 12, and find that amount. You're going to end up with a number. It's going to be less than 12 because 100% of 12 is 12, and so it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 12. If 50% of 12 is 6, which is half, it's going to be less than 6 somewhere, right? So we can kind of look at these problems and see kind of where it should be. So if you get some crazy number, like if you get 390 or something like that, you have to say, wait a minute, I can't go over 12 here because 100% of 12 is 12. So how much is 30% of 12? It's a lot less than 100. So my number is going to be a lot less than 12. All right, so how do we do this? We convert this first part, 30%, to a decimal, and that is 0.30. And then we multiply that by 12, because of means multiply. So if I was going to rewrite that, you would write 0.30 times 12, and that's going to give you the amount. So what is 0.30 times 12? Well, 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 3 is 6. And then I'm finished with that one. placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 3 is 3, and then 1 times 0 is 0. But we'll just leave that one off of there. Adding them all up, you get 0, 6, and 3. And now here's the part where we need to remember how to do this. In the factors, there are 1, 2 decimal spaces, right? And so that means in the answer, there's also going to be 1, 2 decimal spaces, and there we have it. So 30% of 12 is, or equals, 3.6. And that last 0 can be chopped off of there. Anytime you have a 0 on the end of your decimal number, it can come off, and it's just an unnecessary thing. Can't do that with whole numbers, but anything with a decimal, 0 can come off of there. All right, so that's how you do it, converting to a decimal and multiplying. So let's try that same thing here. 75% of 80, what is that amount? Well, 100% of 80 is 80, so I'm not going to go over 80. So let's just find out. All right, so it's 0.75. That's the decimal equivalent of 75%. And now I'm going to multiply that times 80 and see what we get. All right, 0 times 5, 0 times 7, and 0 times 0. All right, finish with that one. Placeholders, 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 7, 56, plus the 4 is 60, and then 8 times 0 is 0, plus the 6 is 60. All right. Adding them all up, 0, 0, 0, 6, 1, 2 spaces in the decimal, or in the factors. That means in the product you'll have 2 spaces. And so 75% of 80 equals 60. And there's no reason to put those zeros on and have it be 60.00. It's just 60. Here's another example problem. 32% of 800. And so again, we're going to be multiplying the decimal equivalent, which is 0.32, right? So 0.32 times 800. Is that acceptable that I wrote the 32 on the bottom and the 800 on the top? And the answer is yes, because you can multiply in any order. And so it's a little easier to multiply the shorter number on the bottom. It just takes less organization. So why not do it, right? So let's begin. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 8 is 16. Then multiplying by the 3 here after we put our placeholder. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 8 is 24. And now it's adding time. That's 0, 0, 6 plus 0 is 6, and 5, and 2. We have 1, 2 decimal spaces in the factors, and so there'll be 2 in the product. 32% of 800 is 256. Right, 256.00. But again, we don't need to put the decimals and the zeros on there if there's nothing there. All right, moving on, 3% of 20. So I have 0.03 is my equivalent of that. So a lot of people are going to want to put 0.3, but again, this 3 has to be in the hundredths place. That's where you start writing your number. And then since there was, nothing with, the tens here, you just put a 0 there to keep your place. So that's multiplied by 20. And again, I can choose to put the longer number on top and the shorter number on the bottom anytime, because we can multiply in any order. So 3 times 0 is 0, 3 times 2 is 6, and then all the rest is going to be 0. 0 times 0, 0 times 2, 0. So I'm all set here. 1, 2 spaces in the factor. That means 1, 2 spaces in the product. I'll put a 0 to fill out that number. So it's 3% of 20 equals 0.6. A couple more. 5% of 5. Quick, in your head, what do you think it is? Most people probably thought 1. Well, it isn't 1. let's find out exactly how much it is. So 5% is not 0.5 or 0.1. It is 0.05, and then I'm going to multiply that by 5. And 5 times 5, 25. 5 times 0 plus the 2 there, and 5 times 0 is 0. And so what do I do with my decimals? 1, 2 spaces. I count them. 1, 2 spaces in the factor. 1, 2 spaces in the product. And so 5% of 5 is not 1. It's 0.25. All right, last one we're going to be doing with the percent of a number, and that's 15% of 25. So converting the percent to a decimal, it would get it at 0.15, and then I would multiply that by the other number. And once you have it set up correctly, it's just multiplication. 5 times 5, 25. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. All right, I multiplied by the 5, and let's put the 0 in there too. 5 times 0 is 0. Cross it out, placeholder. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 1 is 2, plus the 1 is 3, and then 2 times 0 is 0. Adding 5, 7, and 3. And then placing the decimal place in the product. I count decimal spaces in the factor here, 1, 2, and then in the answer, or in the product, 1, 2. So 15% of 25 equals 3.75. All right, so what are we going to be doing? We're going to be working out of the homework book. That's H12-8. We're going to do all the problems 1 through 18. And reminder, convert your percents to decimals, then multiply. And if you can do that step by step in order, you'll have great success with this lesson. Good luck.